Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Therese Miclot. She is a dynamic leadership development consultant and author. And she helps organizations maximize their learning investments and cultivate confident, credible leaders who drive. She's also the author, she's the co-author of the book, The Facilitation Advantage, a book that helps leaders develop the skills to guide teams effectively and with empathy. Welcome to the show, Therese.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Therese. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people, a lot of leaders across the world will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll learn about facilitation skills and leadership, the close connection between these two. But first, let's understand about a bit more about you, about your journey, your background, so that listeners know who they are listening to.
Okay, great. Well, I started my career in global learning and development. So I worked for a multi-billion-dollar engineering company, and my job was to help ensure that the business strategy was met with people capability. So I was always thinking about what do leaders need in order to scale and grow with the business. As the complexity grows, as their teams grow, what are the skills that they're going to need to be able to succeed? And that journey took me through leadership development, facilitation, finding really what are the core skills. And that led me to co-author the book, The Facilitation Advantage for Leaders.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's come straight to the word itself. Facilitation and for leaders. I mean, is it a good word or not so good word when people hear about it? Many people, if they hear, okay, he's a facilitator, it looks like, someone like into some broking or some, networking who is trying to take advantage of the networks that they have. Help us understand because in different cultures, this facilitator or facilitation, these are all understood indifferently. So help us understand from a point of business, from point of a leadership skill.
Okay. I do think it's a misunderstood term. And what I would clarify is I think of facilitation skills as a force multiplier for leaders. There isn't one universal definition for facilitation, except the Latin root of the word is to make easy, to make less difficult. And I think that most leaders have that responsibility for their teams, removing obstacles, making understanding of change easier. And so I would encourage us to think of it as that. It's a method, it's a set of skills to make things easier.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you're talking about, as some people may mention about that, someone, a facilitator generally used to be considered someone who is helping managing meetings and all. And in the present context, if you talk about making things easier, then what's the difference between a leader and a calendar? Because calendar also makes our meetings very easy.
Yes.
And in terms of, so help us understand then because calendar will come cheap, calendar will not cost that much. So help us understand from that point of view, what's the difference?
Sure.
Where does the leader can make a better difference than from perhaps when we are jokingly talking about calendars?
Yeah, when you think about what most leaders are challenged with today, it's how to get things done faster, how to help people accelerate through change, all the change that is happening. It's to help influence, whether that's with their direct reports or with their senior leadership. And they're needing to communicate and collaborate really effectively. I work with a lot of very technical leaders, and they find that just their technical skills alone aren't going to be sufficient when they now have to lead teams. They need to be able to present information more effectively. They need to story tell. If they are sharing complex information to, let's say, a senior leader who doesn't come from the same technical background, how do they translate that information in a way that will make it motivating and easy to understand? How do they keep things on track? All these things are essential skills for leaders that go beyond our technical capability, and I think are more needed now than ever.
Absolutely. So help us understand in terms of, leaders, haven't they been doing this facilitation work, even though it was misunderstood as, just managing meetings?
Yeah,
What is it that you want them to understand extra?
yeah.
Something new, it as a skill.
Yeah, I think what the book offers is more choices. So when you are the eighth meeting of the day and everyone is tired, and you're thinking, okay, what do I do to get people to listen, to pay attention, to engage with me? The more you have facilitation skills, the more choices you have. So, choices. One could be, I'm going to tell a story to make the content come alive. Another choice is, I'm going to stop talking and now draw people out. We'll have a conversation, we'll listen. I'm going to now, instead of that, I'll choose to share information more briefly. So I think that when, managers struggle in their day to day, it's the, more they have choices in front of them that, will enable them to accomplish whatever they want. Listening, being able to have more executive presence, being more influential, being seen as more of a collaborator. Those are the additional ways that leaders can show up with more authority and more ability.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are we talking of a utopian situation? Because how does a micromanager show this part of their skill set? They may have this skill set, but they have a tendency to micromanage. How
Yeah,
do they do that? How do the leaders who are being accused about leading to this great resignation, toxic
yeah,
workplaces? How do they activate their facilitation skills and
yeah,
suddenly overnight, because they seem to be only activated about reporting to the either the board or the leaders about what they have achieved so that they can get better bonuses? How
yeah,
do you tell those leaders about that?
sure.
And so help us understand here.
I will. So there's two places that micromanagers would benefit from this book. And the first is about mindset. So our self-talk about what our role is and how we add value to a team. And so if the voice in your head is telling you, I have to tell people exactly what to do or they won't do it, that's going to lean you to be more of a micromanager. But in the book, we talk about how to think of the voice in your head and manage it differently. For instance, if you shifted your thought from, I need to be in control of all the ways people are going to get things done, to I'm a more effective leader if I focus on strategy and I allow people to focus on the tactics. Another place that micromanagers would benefit is one of the skills in the book is listening. And listening is something that as humans, we're not really designed to do well. And micromanagers have a tendency to talk more than listen. And if you're a better listener, you're going to encourage people to take more ownership. You're going to learn more. You'll be able to problem solve more, as opposed to just talking and asking people to complete work your way.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Therese. Now, in terms of, knowing as a leader, how do I know whether I have got this skill or not? Whether I have the skill, I
Yeah.
do not have the skill, but I have the skill, but I am not using it. Is there a way to test that?
Yes. And my guess is that most of us do have some of the skill, but we could really significantly benefit from more of the skill. We have a free self-assessment at thefacilitationadvantage.com. And I'd encourage your listeners to go there because they can assess themselves against those skills that we find are, highly effective for leaders. They're amplifiers, if you will, to your leadership capability. So it's free. We invite anybody to check that out and see how do they stack up against other leaders that are really exceptional and great facilitators.
Absolutely. We'll come to your book also, Therese. But first to understand about this whole facilitation skills.
Yes.
What about introverts? Are
Mm.
extroverts better facilitators? What
Oh,
about introverts? Can they become facilitators, or they should leave that part of learning for themselves?
yeah, I love that question. I do think that these are universal skills that are learnable for anyone. Those that may not prefer to, be in front of groups would definitely benefit from this because they're going to learn how do I manage the voice in my head when I'm, not, inclined to speak up, and then how can I engage people more effectively and still be authentic and still be myself. For people that are on the opposite, who are very extrovert, sometimes the challenge for them is that they speak too much, and you're going to want to learn, how do I balance that with listening? And so it benefits anyone, any leader, no matter if they see themselves introverted or extroverted, to extend the skills that they have when they're working with people.
Absolutely. Now, a leader is considered that, either others consider them as someone who they can look up to, or
Hmm.
the leader also consider, or the other thinks that this is a powerful person. Even leaders start thinking that, okay, they are the powerful person
Yeah.
within that their sphere of things, and that is why sometimes they want to be a bit away from things. That's why this is called as the corner room, whatever way.
Yeah.
In terms of, how does a leader ensure that their position as a leader, as a person of authority,
Hmm.
someone they can look up to,
Hmm.
is not getting diluted if they want to become more of a facilitator, make things easier for them, is much more approachable
Hmm.
beyond a certain level? How do you calibrate these two things?
Mm. Yeah, I think that it requires you to now be more observant about how others react to you. So, for instance, if you're in a meeting, you run, let's say, a weekly meeting with your team, and you're frustrated because no one ever seems to talk. You ask, is there any questions? What's everybody thinking? You get silence. That's a signal. You should be watching for that. So, it's easy to blame the group, like, well, nobody wants to talk. But often a really good leader would examine, what am I doing that is hindering people from speaking up? Am I asking open-ended questions? Am I creating an environment where people can be candid with me and tell me the truth so that I can get to the bottom line of things and not focus on the surface things that I keep, encountering and I have to keep spending time on. So that would be the first thing, is become much more observant about how people interact with you. Are they, open? Do they share you more? Are they giving you micro signals that they're not on board? The roll of the eyes, crossing of the arms, turning off the camera. Sometimes we're not considering that those are messages, and we have to pay attention to them because that will tell us a bit of how people receive us as a leader and, a facilitator of getting things done.
Absolutely. Now let's come to your book, The
Mm.
Facilitation Advantage. Uh, what is this book about? Is it only about leaders, how they can be facilitators? Is it only for leaders? Who is this book for?
Mhm. It's really for everybody, and I know that's very broad, but all of us, even when maybe we don't have an official leader title next to our name, have the capacity to have a bigger impact in any interaction that we have, whether it's one-on-one with a family member, or with a community activity, or with our children. And I think of these as very universal skills that help you collaborate, connect, influence. And so they certainly aren't limited to those that are at the top and senior leaders. I think that it speaks to all of us that need to create better connection and get things done through people.
Absolutely. What are the things that you have talked about? You see, if someone says, "How do I learn, building facilitation skills?" Is
Yes.
there anything on that? Can you tell us a bit about building facilitation
Yeah.
skills so that, a person who doesn't read the book, at least he or she can remember.
Right, right. So it's three things that are focus areas. One, again, is mindset. Is what am I saying to myself before I walk into a meeting or, lead a conversation? So that would be the first thing I would tell your listeners. If nothing else, pay attention to the voice in your head. And if it's not going to help you get what you want accomplished, if it's not serving you well, if you have imposter syndrome, or you're already thinking to yourself, this is going to go bad, or, what if I screw up? That is not going to help you. And I would always start with inside, in what you're saying to yourself would be the number one thing I would tell your listeners. Focus on that, and you're already setting yourself up to be more successful. In the book, though, we break it down into mindset skills, content. So if you're a subject matter expert and you have to share a lot of complex information, how do you frame it in a way that makes it easier for people to take in? And then process contributions are how you get a group of people from point A to point B. And so we break that down into very practical things. And again, the free self-assessment even gives you an indicator of, oh, am I aware of these things? Am I, paying attention to these things? So with nothing else, you could benefit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to understand, for those, you mentioned about that this book helps leaders develop the skills to guide teams effectively and with empathy. A
Yes.
lot of several of these leaders are being accused of not having enough empathy, or
Yes.
empathy only for few things, empathy about only few people. How
Yeah.
do they begin? Can a book help someone learn about empathy, which is so very much part of our human, just being
Mhm.
part of our being human itself?
It is. And I think when you track empathy to skills, one of the biggest skills is listening. And for instance, I think that we all want to feel heard and understood. And when a leader is much more skillful at listening, they're able to connect with people and say, wow, okay, you may not even agree with me, but you understand where I'm coming from. And we all want that, even when we don't, get the answer we would want from our boss. And so the number one skill beyond self-talk I would offer your listeners is the skill of listening, is to really treat that as it's an advanced leadership skill, to listen below the surface, like we're not just what people are telling me about facts and data, but their intentions and their values. And that's a game changer for leaders who need to show up with more empathy.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's much to learn about these things from you, Therese, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you, about your book. What's the best way for them to do so?
Well, first, find me on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. I post very regularly content around and small, quick, easy to apply ideas. So I would encourage everyone to go to LinkedIn and follow me there. And then in addition to that, the facilitationadvantage.com. We also offer workshops, individual coaching. So I coach a lot of leaders to show up with more executive presence. Maybe they get promoted and now they want to be able to elevate how they're perceived. And so I work individually and in groups too.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.